about the extent to which government writes regulations and then doesn't have to follow due process in carrying those out. I've heard horrible stories of children just being removed from their family without due process, without real legal process that is in a terrifying manner. And I've heard stories of business owners who have government regulators walk into their office and demand files and demand records. And I feel like it's becoming very oppressive, and I'm concerned at the extent to which regulations are keeping us from living normal, free lives. What would you do about that? How do you feel about that?
It's very interesting. You know, one of the #1 reasons companies say that they go overseas is because of taxation and regulations, because they make it very difficult for businesses to compete in this environment. I'll give you an example. My father, in his mining, is regulated by MSHA. And he can have an inspector come into the mine and say everything's great and not be written up. And then he can have a new inspector come 2 months later and write them all up. And there's no appeal process. There's no way to say, well, wait a minute, 2 months ago, nothing was wrong, and now we're being written up, but we're doing the exact same thing. I strongly believe that due process, granted by the Fifth Amendment, needs to be added in the administrative code. Because, just like the example with my dad and MSHA, he can either fix what they demanded or go to a hearing, but the hearing is with that board. It's not with his peers, it's with that board. And so really all businesses' recourse is either fix it, close, or be penalized. Okay? And the same with your Department of Child and Family Services. They very much desire to protect children. I'm not saying that they don't. But sometimes they, in a rush to do something, they cause more harm than they do good. I think there needs to be clear evidence before they can act. And right at the moment, you're right. I've heard many, many stories about parents who perhaps they disciplined a child a little different than the neighbor across the street agrees with, but it's not abusive in any way. But the neighbor makes a complaint, they show up, the kids are taken out of the home. Where did the abuse happen? When those kids were taken out of their home scared to death. Now that doesn't mean that they don't have cases where kids are really being abused, and they do need to be removed from the home. But again, I think there needs to be due process. And that's something I'm going to be looking at as a legislator, because it's not fair. When you're penalizing a person's livelihood to provide for their family, that's just as the same as if you're going to accuse somebody of committing a crime. Because if you take away someone's ability to provide for their family, that's very, very difficult. And so I agree with that. And in the professional code, DOPL, Department of Professional Licensing, they don't have to follow due process either. And it needs to be put into place. So I agree with you completely. I have concerns of that very much so. And they did some changes. They were able to add due process in the taxation litigation. And I think we can use that to bring it into the administrative code as well.